this young man that no one thinks much of. And he says, because there are qualities inside of you that I can use, and you want to allow yourself to be used, I want to use you for my purpose, my will, and my plan. And so he says, I don't care what others may think of you. And so that is the mindset you have to have when you say you want to be used by God. I don't care what others think of me. I don't care what my mama thinks. I don't care what my daddy thinks. I don't care what my brothers and sisters think. The only thing that matters to me is what God thinks, and God says he wants to use me. I don't care about my background, if I've been in jail, or I've been in the detention center. I don't care if I've been down and out on drugs, I've been an alcoholic, I've been a wife beater. I don't care. God says I can use you. Because there's a quality on the inside of you that I'm looking for. God uses ordinary people. Just like you, just like me. And I'm one of the biggest and most confused people when it comes to myself. I'm saying, God, you want to use me to do what? Look at my resume. I don't qualify. And God says it's not about your resume and what you think you qualify for. It is about my resume and the qualities that I look for in a person that I can use. Which means that when you go to Walmart, God can use you. When you go into the shopping mall, God can use you. When you go to work, when you're at family events, God can use you. Even when you're in church, God can use you. God uses. Because ordinary people don't have an agenda to promote themselves. Their agenda is only to be used by God. Second, look at this. God uses those who are committed. Go with me to 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 38. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 38. God uses people who are committed. Have you ever been committed to something? Anybody ever been committed to anything? Which means once I was committed to it, I put my whole heart. I put everything I had into it. No one can tell me anything because I am fully committed to this and I'm going to see it through to the end. Anybody ever done that? Committed. When people try to tell you, well, that's wrong, and no, I'm committed. And so, in 1 Samuel, this is David once again talking about being committed. He says, in verse 38, he says, starting in verse 38, he says, then Saul gave his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mails. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he had never worn such things before. David put on Saul's armor because it was something that Saul used all the time. It was something that Saul trusted in, his armor, but David had never worn it before. And so, what you have to understand when you are committed sometime, you can't do things or perform things with someone else's way of doing it. Because it worked for me does not necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And so when we do, when people read helping life books and life coaches books, and they say, well, you can do this, and you can do that, and you can do this, but because you had success with it does not mean that it's going to work for me. Because God's plan is different for you than it is for me. He might have brought you down Broadway. He might have took me down the back road. He might have had you come 95 and to turn back. He could have had you come secrets. But that is what works for me. And so being committed, you got to realize I have to commit to myself. Something that may work for somebody else may not necessarily work for me, but I have to be able to listen to the voice of God to find out what works for me. And that's a problem with the church, is our commitment, because we base our commitment on other people in the church. When you get mad at the pastor, you stop coming. You stop singing, you stop serving, you stop serving God, you stop doing everything because you're not committed. Your commitment was not to God, your commitment was to the pastor. And the pastor does not have a heaven or a hell to place you in. I can't reward you for the work that you've done when you go on to be in glory. I can't give you anything. I can't show. All the thing I can do is, baby, I recognize you. I appreciate you, Sister Linda, for doing such an outstanding job. I really do. But that's nothing compared to God can give. And he says, I can't go in these. And he protested to Saul. He says, I'm not used to them. So David took them off, and he picked up 5 smooth stones from the stream and put them into his shepherd bag, and then armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistines. And so I have to stay committed to what I'm used to. God put David in a position where he used his staff and his sling before. And God established within himself that, hey, this is what you need to be committed to. Establish it. This is what I used with you before. And those are the very things I'm going to use with you again. You're not supposed to take on somebody else's ideas, somebody else's notions, somebody else's way of doing things. You're not to do that. When I started ministering, the first thing I did was I started copying the people or the ministers that were around me, and I noticed how the people reacted to them. And I said within myself, talking about commitment, I'm not committed to God because this is what God says I am. I'm going to commit to a method and a procedure that worked for others. Only to find out it didn't work for me. You know what I'm saying? Listen, it didn't work for me to the point that I went to my pastor and I said to him, I think I need to sit down and stop preaching because this ain't working. And the reason it wasn't working is because I was committed to another person's methods and ways of doing things. And God says, I call you because you're ordinary. I call you because I want you to commit to my plan, my purpose, and my will. I call you because I know that once you commit to something, you don't let it go. But if I commit to something else besides this plan, I'm going to go. Thirdly, this is what Psalm 37:5 says. He says, commit thy ways unto the Lord, trust also in him, and what he shall bring it to pass. Whatever God has, whatever desires you have in life, God says, once you commit to me, I am going to bring every plan, every prophecy, every word that was given concerning you by me. God says, if you commit to it, I will commit to bringing it to pass. Everything that's been spoken concerning you, concerning your family, concerning your life, concerning your relationship, God says, if you commit to me, I will bring every one of those things to pass. Amen. How many things has God spoken over your life? How many things that he has spoken has not yet come to pass? Anybody got something he's spoken and come to pass? Well, he said, if you commit to me, I'm going to bring it to pass. So David had to commit to God's way of doing things. He couldn't commit to Saul's way of doing it. He couldn't commit to his confidence in Saul's arm because that wasn't going to get the job done. And so the spiritual aspect of it is, I commit to him. Third, God looks for those people who are consecrated to him. consecrated house. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 18 and 19. God looks for those who are consecrated. He says, this is a story of Saul, that when God said he had rejected Saul from being king, the Spirit of God left Saul. And Saul began to be troubled within himself. The Spirit of God left Saul, and though David was now anointed by the prophet, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David and stayed upon David. Now, understand this. God looks for those who are consecrated. And so here, God has to find a way to get David into the palace, which is going to be his destiny. He's in the sheep field, being ordinary, being committed to God. And God has to find a way because he's consecrated, which means that he's been set aside. How many of y'all feel he's been set aside? Set aside for a special work in God. And we all should feel like God has set me aside to work him that can't nobody else do. Ain't no round in the bush. Ain't nobody else coming because I don't do it, because I walk in disobedience. No one else is coming. It's you. Because he has consecrated you, or he has separated you out of all the millions of people in the world, or out of all the thousands or hundreds of people that you may know. God has consecrated. He has picked you out specially for him. So God has to find a way to get David into the palace of his destiny. And so he causes some things that happen that makes Saul's spirit get disturbed, and all of a sudden Saul feels that if I hear some good church music, anybody feel like going through something, all I need to hear is some church music. Yeah. Give me some church music. You know, you hear some church music, something that pick you up. Yes, God, I can do it. I can do it. You know, and all of a sudden, once the music stops, and now you're back to reality. You don't realize it's not the music, but it is the consecration of your life. So God finds a way to get him to the palace. And he says, then answered one of his servants, his small servant, and said, behold, I've seen a son of Jesse, the Benjaminite, that is cunning. Now that word cunning there is yada. It means experience. It means that he has the ability to discern what he's doing. It also means skillful. So he is skillful in playing the harp and a mighty valiant man. Now understand this. He hadn't fought one fight. Nobody has seen him kill a lion, kill a bear. He hadn't fought Goliath. No one has seen anything. Only thing they know about him is he is a sheep herder. But now God speaks to Saul's servant, and it is not the servant of Saul speaking, it is God speaking to the servant, declaring what David is. Before anybody ever seen it. You ever hear somebody say to you, I didn't know you could do that. Where did you learn that? David knew it was already on the inside of him. And so he says he's skillful at playing the harp, and he's a mighty, valiant man. Now, understand this. Valiant means to be a person of strength, wealth, and influence. He is a mighty, valiant person of strength. You ever did something you didn't know you could stand? You ever had some trials come up against you, and you just know you weren't going to make it. But all of a sudden you made it through, and you said to yourself, yes, I made it. You thought I wasn't going to make it. You thought you had the last word. I know you wanted me to fail. Well, look at here. I made it. Strength. You recognize there was strength on the inside of you that you did not have. He also also says influence. Because there are people that you connect to in your life that God has given you influence. And have somebody do something for you, they just, I don't know why am I doing this? I just feel this, I just have a need to do it. You ever have people, young people, young ladies, young men walk up to you and say, just walk up to you and you know, I just said, man, I just want to be this one. They see something very distinct on the inside of you and they just want to mirror you. That's it. He says to him, a man of war, which means he can fight. How many of y'all fight in the spirit? I mean, when you get mad, the first thing you want to do, well, take off my earrings, take off my shoes. Now, what maybe if I can talk about a person of war that I understand, that I fight against principalities, I fight against powers, I fight against the rulers of the darkness of this world, I fight against spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. I understand that I'm a person of war. My war is not a physical war. My war is a spiritual war. And I have to fight against things that people don't see. I have to fight against things that come upon people's lives to deliver them. I have to fight against drugs to deliver them. I have to fight against addiction to deliver them. I have to fight against alcoholism to deliver them. I have to fight against these things over the lives of my children, over the lives of my family, over the lives of my church, of people here in the church. I have to fight over these things, and I can't get mad at them because I understand this fight is a spiritual fight, and the spiritual some reality has taken a hold of their life and is striking them and pulling them away from the plan, the purpose, and the will of God. And it's up to me as being your pastor. I gotta fight for you. And fighting means sometimes I gotta pray when I don't want to pray. I gotta pray when you act up sometimes. I gotta pray when you hurt my feelings sometimes. But I understand I'm a man of war. And my war is not for you. My war is for the eternity of your soul. That you get to the kingdom of heaven. That you become all God has desired for you to be. That you become the priest. That you become the king. That you become the queen that God has ordained for you. That's my fight. God has also called you to be a fighter. For those that may be around you. You have to fight. So I'm consecrated. Fight. God has set me aside because one of the qualities he knows in the side of me is fight. Don't let go. I'm not going to be discouraged. Fight. He says he's a man of war. And he also says here, look at this. He says, and prudent, which means discreet, intelligent, of understanding. Which means that when somebody asks you to do something, your spirit of discernment kick in, but I don't know about that. Or you get a witness down on the inside and say, don't go there. Don't say that. Discreet, intelligent, because you see things beyond what other people see. When they tell you about it, you can visualize it in your mind. You say, just based upon the information you give to me, with my understanding, that's not going to turn out to be a good thing. And you say, I can't be a part of that. And he also says to him, a comely man, which means a person of royalty and dignity. In verse 19, wherefore Saul sent message unto Jesse and said, send me David thy son, which is what? With the sheep. So he tells him all these qualities of David, who yet he's an ordinary person in the field with the sheep. What has God spoken to someone concerning you? You feel he just disciplined? Nobody. If God says to somebody, you're great, you're mighty, you're strong, you're powerful. But yet, you still working the same job, working on time the same desk, doing the same thing. But God says something to somebody else differently than you. God says something to somebody else that takes you and describes your future and describes what you will be. That's a consecrated person. That's a characteristic that God can use. You gotta realize I'm set aside for the master's use. And lastly, he also calls for those who are weak. Now, that is a nasty word. Even when it comes to your marriage vow, thou shalt honor, love, and obey. Oh, they just took that. This modern society, they just took the word right out. No, I ain't obeying nobody. I can't obey. Well, if you really think about it, obeying is just accepting a way of doing things. And that's how it is. And so if God's going to use you, you have to have the characteristics of being obedient. Because if you're not obedient to the things of God, then guess what? That's the same thing he said. I'm rejecting him from being king because he wasn't obedient to the things that I said. And I don't know about you, but there's a lot of times I haven't been obedient to what God has said and what God has told me to do and what God has called me to say. You know, I kind of hesitated, some things I didn't do, but this is because he's merciful and forgiving. The obedient person always admits their faults. The Lord forgives me. I didn't do it. Just give me another opportunity. I'll do it next time. This is what it says. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 45 to 48. He says, David replied, this is talking to Goliath, the Philistine, come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin. He says, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you and will kill you and cut off your head. Then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and the wild beasts, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, not with the sword and the spear. He says, this is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. As Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Now, the significance about this is you see they have a characteristic of obedience. Obedience is when God says to him, son, just as I was with you when you killed the lion and the bear, you do the same thing to him. Obedience says to him, no matter what the odds are, or no matter how they may look. So we're talking with a man that's over 9 feet tall. We're talking with a man that has carried a spear and a javelin. We're talking with a man that has been trained from his youth to be a warrior. God says, in spite of all that, all I need you to do is just be obedient. When everybody in the army of Israel was afraid, God says, I just need you to be obedient. Because what you have to understand is, obedience is stronger than fear. Because when you are obedient to the will, the plan, and the purpose of God, it drives away fear because you understand, I am not doing this. As David said, the battle is the Lord's. And all God says, I need someone that is willing. If you're willing, which means you're obedient, God says, I got this. I just need you to step out into the battlefield. I just need you to step out on the rough waters that you may be going through. That you look from the shore, man, I don't know if I can take that. God says, I just need you to step into the water. I just need you to step into some things that may not be looking right for you. I need you just to step toward that and know I got you. That's all I need. And he says, your obedience. This is the Lord's battle. I'm going to use you. Now, understand this. And it says here in verse 19, and it says here, he says, as Goliath moved closer to attack. And so, no matter how things may be looking, how things may appear, as they get closer to you, obedience this is still the Lord's fight. And he says, as he moved closer, the obedience says, and David quickly ran out to meet him. Obedience says, oh, you gonna come to me? Guess what? I'm gonna run towards you. Because I understand that my obedience is God. If I walk in disobedience, I'm walking back, whoa, like, whoa. Oh, you go. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Obedience says you run to what God has proposed. You run to what God has said. You run to what God has planned for you. You run to, because as you run to it, then that very person that God has placed upon you is waiting for you to fulfill and be obedient to the word of God. Somebody is waiting on you to be obedient to the word of God because they're waiting on you to deliver them. They're waiting on you to pray for them. They're waiting on you to heal them. They're waiting on you to lay your hands upon them. They're waiting on you to release purpose and destiny into their life. Somebody is waiting on you because you are obedient. What are you trying to say, Pastor? I'm trying to say anything. I'm trying to say this. Do you have the characteristics that God is looking for that says he could use? Or do you have? Are you committed? Have commitment? Are you consecrated? Are you just an ordinary person? Are you obedient? That's all I need. Doesn't bring anything. You don't need to send him your resume. You don't need to fax it. You don't need to email it to him. You don't need somebody to call him. All he wants to do is, I'm ordinary. I'm committed. I'm consecrated. And I'm obedient. What was Jesus? Ordinary. Committed to fulfill the will of God. Consecrated to do the work of God. And he was obedient. He says, I do what I hear the Father say. Obedient. He chose on another person to do extreme things. He chose you to do great exploits. They that know their God shall do great exploits. Just shows you. Thank you. Ask yourself, do you have a problem? There's something